Back here on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show, Jackson Heil, Emmanuel Ribari, and a pleasure to be joined now by Brendan Kuty, Yankees reporter for NJ.com and the Star Ledger. Brendan, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you?
I'm well, man. Thank you for having me. It's raining like crazy out here today. Yankees off day. I don't hate it. It means I don't have to drive into the city.
Can't blame you on that one, and hope everything is well with you. How has quarantine been for you? Obviously a crazy time in our society. What's been keeping you busy up until now, baseball coming back in a few weeks?
Work, man. Work. Even when there's no baseball on the field, even when the negotiations were happening and we didn't even know if there would be baseball, there's still reporting to be done. Fans want to know what's going on with the team, what's going on with the league. They want information. The Yankees are a 24/7 newsmaker, and you just got to grind harder to find anything you can find. So trust me, it hasn't been tough for me to keep busy.
Brendan, speaking of COVID-19, the quarantine, and now transitioning back into baseball, MLB has placed some media regulations with the return of baseball to Yankee Stadium. How have those presented an obstacle to what you normally do on a daily basis as a beat reporter?
Changes the game. Completely changes the game. The biggest problem is that we don't have the ability, we don't have sanctioned one-on-one interviews where players are made available to reporters. We can ask them questions when they have time. We can pull them aside, have conversations, build relationships, and get stories of our own one-on-one. Without the ability to do that, it really makes it difficult, or I don't want to say makes it difficult, but it's another challenge to distinguish your coverage from everybody else's coverage. If everyone's getting the same, so right now the deal is, and the Yankees PR staff is working its butt off. It's really helping us out in getting us players. But if we all get the same players through Zoom calls, we all get the manager through Zoom calls, we're all getting the same content. And if you're getting the same content from all of the major newspapers, the New York Post, Daily News, Ledger, Newsday, Bergen Record, everybody, The Athletic, MLB.com, if they're all getting the same content, it's hard to distinguish yourself. So you want readers to come to you. So now it's about going off campus to find stories. I wrote a story the other day speaking to an NYU professor about how many fans you can actually fit inside Yankee Stadium if you're social distancing. You're keeping 6 feet between each fan. I spoke to a infectious disease expert who broke down how, okay, you keep fans 6 feet apart in the stands, but what about parking garages? What about ticket lines? What about concession lines? What about bathrooms? I talked to a doctor about concussions and why it was such a good sign that Tanaka was able to, get on the bike for 15 minutes the other day and have his heart rate go up and not, have any kind of concussion symptoms. So you have to find new angles of coverage because everyone's kind of getting the same thing right now. Sorry for the long-winded explanation, but that's the challenge that I'm working with, and we're all working with every day.
Brendan, you've mentioned those challenges in one of the stories you wrote, mentioning the NYU professor that you talked to. Hal Steinbrenner wants fans in the stands at some point, even at 30% capacity, he mentioned. Do you see that as a foreseeable option in the future, if that's going to happen at all this season? I mean, it's likely not, given obviously with all the restrictions that are happening, but do you think that is a possibility at some point this season?
I wish I could tell you. I need to preface this with, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. Mm-hmm. If the health officials, if government officials say that we can put X amount of fans in the stands, I have to go with, for the most part, that they have our best interests in mind and that it can be done. Would I personally want to see it? I don't know. I'd want to see it at a super low level, for sure, just to be as careful as possible. I don't know why why fans need to be in the stands. I get it why owners and why baseball wants fans in the stands. They want to make money. Duh. But I don't know, like, if I'm a fan, I don't know what's making me say, oh, I got to be at Yankee Stadium right now. But I don't think like everybody else. I know that people have their own drivers. They have their own thing. Sorry about that noise. That was an email coming in. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it. Do I think it's possible? Maybe. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Brandon, you mentioned Masahiro Tanaka, a very scary moment with Giancarlo Stanton hitting him with the comebacker at Yankee Stadium. Do you have any gauge as to the timetable? Because the Yankees seem to say he's in good spirits, but do you know if there's an outside chance he could be ready for the start of the season?
Where are we at in the calendar? Today is the 10th. Opening day is the 23rd. Yankees don't need a fifth starter until the 29th. They might not even need a fifth starter the second time around, right? Because they have an off day after opening day.
Right.
So they could go 4 and then 5, and then you get the fifth starter. So do I expect him to start the season on the IL? Kind of, because he's not throwing right now. He's got 2 weeks to kind of build up, and you figure that his arm care regimen is going to take a step backward because of this. And you have to be super careful, man. Concussions are tricky. And I wrote a story about this a couple of days ago. Ask Clint Frazier, ask Jacoby Ellsbury. Those two guys over the last few years have had serious setbacks when it comes to recovering from concussions. Listen, Masahiro, great guy. We all want to see him healthy. We don't want to see anyone hurt, but we all want to see him healthy. He doesn't feel any symptoms right now. Who knows how he's going to feel next week? So I wouldn't bet on him starting the year. I would bet on him starting the year on the IL, but I don't know that. I can't be sure.
Brennan, with some injury concerns to the Yankees rotation, how do you see some of these young guys playing a factor, if playing a factor at all this year, particularly Davy Garcia, Clark Schmidt, and amongst a few others as well?
Without knowing exactly where Davy Garcia is in his workout plan, in his throwing program, I thought it was interesting yesterday that the Yankees used Davy for an inning in the inter-squad game and then pulled him. I don't know if they are thinking like, hey, maybe he could be an opener for us, because what you get out of that is he's used to being a starting pitcher, so he can prepare as a starting pitcher. And then he comes in, does an inning or two, and then leaves, and you can give it to the bullpen if you want to go with some kind of bullpen day. I don't know how built up he is. They have a lot of guys who are built up. You look at a Mike King, you look at a Clark Schmidt. They might be ahead of Davey in terms of starting pitching, but on raw stuff and the ability to get outs for an inning, 2 innings. I think he's an interesting opener candidate, not named Chad Green or Jonathan Holder. Oh, so but some more guys. I mean, Clark Schmidt, how good did he look the other day? He's getting praised heaped on him left and right. From Jay Happ was saying how good he looks, how smart he is, how nice he is. Not that matters, but just how smart he is. During spring training, the initial spring training, he was soaking up a lot from Garrett Cole. They have a lot of conversations. I think Garrett Cole praised him. So, and Mike King, he looked good the other night. Boone talked about how he's got 5 pitches, 2 if you count the 2 different fastballs he throws. So I would put those guys maybe ahead of Davey in terms of starting, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Davey in the bullpen even as an opener.
Brendan, without being too cliche, many say that anything can happen in a 60-game season as opposed to the marathon 162-game schedule. From a Yankees perspective, what would you say is the biggest obstacle they could face in this shortened season from a roster perspective?
Ooh. I mean, they're a great team, right? On paper. They were predicted to win 162 games. What? They were predicted to do really well in a 162-game season. I mean, what about you guys? Where do you guys see the obvious hole? I mean, pitching, right? There's Cole, and then you kind of wonder with Paxton. He had a rough first half last year, but looked really good in the second half. He's coming off of an injury. Tanaka, we don't really know where he's at. In terms of his injury, Jordan Montgomery, he's coming back. He hasn't really pitched since 2018. I would say it's starting pitching. Do you guys agree?
For sure. And you look at Severino, who was supposed to slot behind Cole, and he's out for the year. So maybe that would be the biggest question mark.
Yeah.
Speaking of the 60-game season, I mean, everything is under a magnifying glass pretty much, given that obviously there's 100-something less games than it wouldn't usually be. How important do you think a fast start is for the Yankees, particularly this year, given obviously it's only a 60-game schedule, but you also have such a tough first month of the year playing Washington, you play Atlanta, you play Philadelphia, you get Boston a few times. The only real cupcake in that schedule over the first month and 30 games or so is Baltimore. Do you think a fast start is of more importance this year, just given their schedule and obviously being only a 60-game season?
It's paramount. It's the only thing that matters. You can't have a slow start. Man, I wish I had the stat. They equated, like, they talk about how baseball's a marathon, not a sprint. I think Jack Curry tweeted the other day saying that 60-game season is equivalent to a 10-mile marathon instead of a 26-mile marathon. So my point is, you can't get off to a slow start, because then you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be behind the 8 ball, and you have to win. Every game becomes must win if you start the season 10-20. Start the season 10-20, you are in trouble. So it's paramount. It's important for not just the Yankees, but for every single team. And yeah, that's all that matters. Now, you know how important it is, because Boone's talked about it. Boone is very much the one game at a time. Forget about yesterday. I'm confident in our guys that we're going to, do well. And now he's even said, no, like, we got to get off to a good start. So yeah, super important, Jackson.
Let's talk about a 60-game season then. A lot of people don't think it will be remembered in the same light of a 162-game season, for obvious reasons, of course, being a shortened season and being in the year 2020 where it just seems like everything is a disaster. How much do you think an asterisk will be put upon a winner of this 60-game season and the World Series champion this year?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about in terms of asterisk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you think would be like the asterisk? Like, how do you think people would look at an asterisk? Like, what kind of asterisk would they put on it?
Maybe not for the World Series champion necessarily, but say, I mean, obviously stats will be skewed, I think, for a 60-game season. Obviously, if anyone comes close to hitting 400, that'll certainly be an asterisk, and any ERA title will have an asterisk.
Right.
As for a winner, it's hard to say, though.
Right, but it's kind of like everyone's got the same deck of cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you say asterisk, you want to look at that one team differently, because no one's ever really put an asterisk on the entire season on every team before. Mm-hmm. I think we're just going to note this season as the 60-game season. Mm-hmm. Asterisks have such a negative connotation, right? The home run record, the Astros, maybe even the Red Sox, if you want to say that. You want to talk about the steroid era, all those records that were set, the offensive explosion. But this asterisk that would be put next to the season would be of nobody's doing. The coronavirus is here, and it's not anybody's fault. So yeah, sure, asterisks, whatever. But whoever wins this World Series is going to sell a lot of T-shirts that say 2020 World Series champion, and they're going to bring in the money, and that's all that matters.
Brendan, I saw a story that described the Tampa Bay Rays as potentially the biggest challenger to the Yankees for the American League this year, even though the last couple of years it's been the Houston Astros who have reigned supreme over the league, albeit the cheating scandal. From your perspective, who is that biggest challenger to the Yankees?
I mean, the Astros are a great team, right? That offense is silly. They play defense. They've got a solid starting rotation. But the Rays are tough too, man. Even in years where they've had off seasons, even in seasons where they've had off years, they've been tough. They're a hard team they're scrappy. They're talented. They're young typically. Yeah, the Rays are just as capable as knocking off anybody as the Astros are, as the Yankees are. I think the Rays are certainly a challenger for that. The Blue Jays might surprise us a little bit with their young talent, with the young lineup, especially in a short season. I think it's fair to say that the Rays are certainly up there.
Brendan, one last question before we wrap up. I mean, you've mentioned Garrett Cole on a few occasions during this interview, and in your most recent observations, you wrote that a lot of people just think he is a step ahead of everyone. What's been the biggest thing that's impressed you, just being able to see Garrett Cole in a full workout setting after basically 3 months of no baseball activities, but no team activities for that matter?
Well, so I'm kind of grading it the way everyone else I think would be grading it, right? We've never seen this before. So I don't know where guys should be at. There's 2 weeks until opening day, and opening day is gonna be different. Back then, typical opening day, you'd expect Garrett Cole to be good to go for 7 innings, 6 innings, maybe even those a complete game. But they're only thinking that he's ready for 5 right now. So how he looks, what stood out to me is his intensity. I don't even know if it's necessarily his intensity, because I have no way of saying that J-Hap isn't as intense, that Tanaka isn't as intense, but the stadium shuts down when Garrett's on the mound. Everyone's watching. The moment feels bigger. He draws a different type of attention. So the moment feels bigger, the intensity is bigger. And that's what I notice. There just seems to be a different level of focus from everybody involved when Garrett Cole's on the mound. When I wonder what it's going to be like for the Yankees. I wonder if you're going to see a more, I don't know, tightly wound team, but a more focused team when he's on the mound, especially for the first time, just because it's Garrett Cole. You can't screw this up. That might be what they're thinking. So that's what stands out to me the most. And I just rambled a lot.
Brendan Kuty of NJ.com and the Star Ledger giving us all the Yankee and Major League Baseball insight. Brendan, thank you so much for joining the show. Best of luck. Stay healthy as this year goes on as well.
Jackson, thank you. Emmanuel, thank you. Robert, thank you. I hope they let you guys in the stadium at some point. I don't know how that works. You guys are around often. You guys do come by to home games. I don't know what that situation is. I don't know what that's like. But yeah, no, I just wish the best to you guys, and keep doing your thing.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it.